Hello and welcome to Inspiral Out Loud, where Mars and I are chatting about energy today. Mars, do you know much about, say, dirty electricity and the kinds of electricity that we're using and why they're damaging?
Yeah, the problem with household power is not so much the power itself. To kind of preface all of this, when you've got electrical current running through any sort of wire, you create a certain amount of electromagnetic field around the wire, and depending on how much current is running through that wire, you get larger fields. Now, when you've got electrical wiring running through your home, I won't get into too much technicality, but basically if it's a straight wire, the field is quite minimal. If it's coiled up, it amplifies the field. So wiring in the house isn't really so much of a problem for us generally, as long as you don't have things like directly next to your head while you're sleeping and that sort of thing. But the problem becomes when the power is what they call dirty, which is, if you think of a alternating current which goes through all household wiring, it means that a field of electricity is moving forward and backwards. And in Australia, it's at 50 hertz, which is 50 cycles, which is 50 times a second. That doesn't produce a massive field around the wire. But when you start having changing or transient smaller signals interacting with the wiring in the house, it starts producing tiny little ripples in the wave going through, coming out. The field coming off the wiring, and those little ripples are what is known as dirty power, and that's what affects us. It's the same reason why Wi-Fi, mobile signals, and other various sorts of communication technologies interfere with our cells. It's not so much the carrier or the base cycle, it's the little ripples that cause a lot of the problems. So there are some technologies that you can use to minimize that to some extent.
So by those technologies, are you talking about things like I've seen devices that you say plug into the wall that are supposed to, I don't know what you'd even call it, equalize or neutralize those spikes? Is that what you mean by the technology that's available?
Yeah, so you can do it either per PowerPoint, or you can actually buy special devices that are a bit more expensive that you can essentially put between the fuse box in your house and the rest of the entire household. Those are considerably more expensive. But if you're particularly sensitive, well, it's worth spending the money to preserve your health. I mean, well, what better way to spend your money than to preserve your health? That's all you've got, really.
Yeah. Now, so the technology that we're using currently in order to send electricity into houses and utilize it, has that changed at all? And was it any better, or have we always had these issues with it?
Generally, with the introduction of mobile towers and Wi-Fi units and all of these kind of devices, that has increased the problem. But generally speaking, it depends on how the infrastructure is created in various states. Some places have pretty clean power, some places have incredibly dirty power and unregulated power. In Australia, we have a lot of problems with very severe spiking in the power supply. So that's not so much to do with dirty power, that's more to do with unregulated power, but that causes its own problems. A lot of electronic devices get damaged if that happens frequently enough. So sometimes you could, we see on our standard plug in the wall devices that it says 240 volts, and if you measure the output out of the wall, sometimes that can spike up to nearly 500 volts, depending on what's going on, either through the transmission of the electricity or the actual production.